Whenever a franchise runs for several decades, the fan base around it becomes segmented by generations. A really successful one will cater to fans of all ages, doing things to satisfy hardened veterans of the series as well as entertain newcomers. Some gaming franchises have been able to do this really well, even continuing to grow. Final Fantasy has had its ups and downs throughout the years, with tons of fans losing interest due to the loss of the turn-based battle system and a couple of middling releases. While I would say we're in the middle of a renaissance due to the ridiculous success of 14 and the better than expected 15, this isn't the first time Final Fantasy has been in this predicament. As much as I liked Final Fantasy 7 and 8, a lot of fans of the original 6 at the time were like, what is this? Where are the crystals? What is this romance? Ugh. After taking place strictly in hybrid fantasy settings for a decade, suddenly it was like Cloud's using a Panasonic flip phone and there's a bunch of battle teens going to high school and being broody with their gun swords. It's a far cry from Cecil's quest to become a warrior of light for sure. Freaking kids in their materia, they don't know anything about jobs. Oh wait, yeah they do. I've been playing the series since 4 popped over to the States, so it's been really cool to see the evolution of it all. So that leads me to the question, what about Final Fantasy IX? Does it satisfy the new and old school? Did it spark early internet forum debate with people declaring Final Fantasy dead? Did I like it? I guess we can find that out. For this, we gotta go all the way back to January of 2000. Right after Y2K failed to destroy all of humanity, Squaresoft at the time held the Square Millennium event in Tokyo. Here they were like, all right kids, you love the Final Fantasy, check this out, and it was like bam, 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 Final Fantasy. Kinda like the time when Fabula Nova Crystallis was announced, but better because, I mean, you might have seen some of the leaked footage from the event where Tidus has brown hair and they pulled a Nintendo showing a few PNGs of Final Fantasy XI. But this was a big deal back then. At the time, and now ironically, Final Fantasy IX had been delayed so that Square didn't have to compete against Dragon Quest VII, which, I mean, fair, but that meant 2 games ahead of 9 were already on everyone's radar, which immediately put it in a weird spot. You already had the future of Final Fantasy in everyone's eyes. That also meant that 9 would come out barely a year before 10 and not even 2 years before 11. Can you imagine us getting a Final Fantasy a year in this day and age? Oh, how times change. So for 9, series veteran and creator Hironobu Sakaguchi wanted to take the game back to the series' root and create something that would be an all-encompassing celebration of the series as a whole. A best of or return to form that encapsulated every concept that Final Fantasy had come up with. This is most obvious with one of the main characters, Vivi, who was designed to look like the classic Black Mage. But 9 isn't just a trip down memory lane, it's a completely new adventure that has some of the best the series has to offer. However, I feel like in discussion, it tends to get buried or overshadowed by other games in the series. With Square-Enix pumping out high quality things left and right, 9 was so squished in before the seminal release of Final Fantasy X that for a lot of people at the time, it went in one ear and out the other. It was hard for that not to happen when you go from static pre-rendered backgrounds and blockhead to like massive 3D worlds with fully voice-acted and choreographed cutscenes. 10 was a spectacle that not only sold more than 9, but is still one of Square Enix's top 5 selling games of all time. 9 is all the way down here. In fact, it's the lowest selling mainline Final Fantasy since the series went 3D. I mean, 6 million is nothing to scoff at, don't get me wrong, but still, why is that? Found out today you can actually still buy sealed copies of Final Fantasy IX and even Chrono Cross directly from Square Enix. What the heck? If you want to unbox a 19-year-old game, I guess you can do it for cheap. Why is the most critically praised Final Fantasy so overshadowed? The answer is probably a mix of like oversaturation, the PlayStation 2, and a lack of anime boys, but that's besides the point. Though, come on, Amaranth? All of the footage we're gonna be seeing today is from the HD remaster because that thing looks freaking gorgeous, but you can always just pop this bad boy into like a PS3 and it'll look just fine. I am gonna do my best to avoid spoilers since that is like the most important part of this game, at least until the very end or the next video. So yeah, here we go. Final Fantasy IX. The beginning of this game is something truly special. Welcome to Gaia, the set piece of our journey, a world inhabited by a plethora of different races and climates. We open on a boat caught in the middle of a perfect storm before we cut to a princess presumably waking up from a daydream. Now, those of you who are used to previous Final Fantasies might have been expecting a crazy action sequence or 7's impressive pullback from Aerith directly into blocky gameplay. 9, however, decides to show us a vast and alive landscape, in particular the Kingdom of Alexandria, before pulling out to reveal a massive airship. Now, airships are nothing new to Final Fantasy, but to see one floating on top of mist is really cool. Previously, mist was shown in Final Fantasy IV to be a creation of magic, having the power to manifest dragons. So how about 9? It's a mystery. We go into the airship to be introduced to our main man, Zidane Tribal, one of my favorite characters ever. I used to think that it was Zidane, but then... Zidane! So now, none of y'all can yell at me. Thank you, Dissidia. I'm gonna name him Austin, though. Zidane is searching for people on board the ship because it's heist time. Unlike every single other main Final Fantasy protagonist up to this point, Zidane isn't exactly what you would call Warrior of Light material. Instead, he's this filthy, overly flirtatious, lanky monkey thief boy. Similar to Locke from 6, but with a little more rambunctiousness. Zidane and his co-thieves, Cinna, Marcus, and Blank, get jumped by the boss man Baku, who basically just guffaws after beating the pants off of them. Then we are introduced to the plan, to put on a stage play and kidnap Princess Garnet, or Braun if you're a sassy boy. Yo, you didn't need these dolls to explain this plan. Who did this? It was Cinna, wasn't it? From here, we're taken from the skies to the ground of Alexandria, where we see another main character and resident best boy, Vivi, before getting that lovely title card, and here is where the main game starts. Yeah, no, you're not playing as Zidane yet. You're playing as this little black mage. Gotcha. Vivi has a ticket to the play Zidane's crew, Tantalus, is putting on, I Want to Be Your Canary, written by the legendary Lord Avon. It's basically the Shakespeare of Gaia, no big deal, MBD. Too bad Vivi gets hustled, no play for him. So after contemplating life and jumping rope for several hours, he gets puckered into breaking and entering. Nice. It's a bait and switch from what you think's about to happen. With something like Final Fantasy IV, you start up by essentially murdering in cold blood and starting to have doubts while blindly following your king. In 7, you roll up on a train to start your eco-terrorist mission. In 9, the opening sequences set up the center stage through various perspectives. If we only controlled Zidane, then we wouldn't get to experience what the city itself felt like. Alexandria feels extremely alive, and certain NPCs don't just stand in place, but actually walk around to do stuff, which is pretty impressive for the PlayStation 1. Likewise, if we'd only played as Vivi, we'd have suddenly be thrust into a situation where we have to run away from the popo and hop on the stage, but that's still not everyone. Princess Garnet decided that she wanted to run away from home anyway and is like, yo, kidnap me, it's cool, whatever. Meanwhile, you're also playing as Sir Aldebert Steiner, the captain of the Knights of Pluto, who is tasked with finding the princess. He's a good boy, although it kinda sucks at the beginning, but hey, character growth. Obviously, this is the very beginning of the RPG, so of course, everything goes as planned. Oh wait, yep, okay. Oh no. The character perspective switching is very similar to Final Fantasy VI, and every set piece in the game benefits from it, just like the beginning here. And well, from here, the adventure unfolds. I could spend like the rest of this video talking about the story and just recapping the plot, but A, I think that would be kind of boring, and B, there's a lot of other stuff I want to talk about. We'll get to spoilers next time. Plus, if you haven't played this game before, I'm really hoping that this video will change your mind. There's a lot of people out there whose first Final Fantasy was 10 or, God forbid, 15. A lot of people watching this video probably weren't even alive when this game came out. Oh. So I'm gonna break things down into sections so we can go into detail individually. Let's get started with the visuals and aesthetics. Wait, why are you starting with the graphics? Well, my friend, because back when Squaresoft ruled the RPG market, this was kind of their thing. From the Super Nintendo all the way to today in some extents, Square's all about pushing those polygons. How far can we take a console's graphics? What do we need to do to blow people away? Well, originally, the answer was making gorgeous CG cutscenes, some of which haven't aged very well. But also, it was about making the characters look real good on the screen. Ah, shut up. This was amazing back then. At the time, 9 was seen as a minor increase, but I think that's because the anti-aliasing of the PlayStation 1 was non-existent. When these models were cleaned up, upscaled, and slightly redone for the remake, they stand out a lot, even with emulation and model rips. Everything has a beautiful hand-drawn looking texture to it. Any character or monster you run into is like, whoa, that's PS1? And I mean, well, kinda. Unfortunately, that doesn't apply to the pre-rendered backgrounds, a staple of the PlayStation era in general. Your Resident Evils and Silent Hills made use of these, but Final Fantasy always had some of the most fantastic ones. It's just a crying shame that these are unable to be upscaled properly. Back in this era, a lot of game studios, including Squaresoft, didn't have a good system for backing up and archiving things they worked on after it hit store shelves. Not all of them are lost, but when you see a comparison side by side of what could have been for the HD version, it's a sad sight. Instead, we just get compressed PS1 upscales. Sick. Now there is an HD graphics mod you can use for this, the Mogiru Al mod, which gives a little insight into what could have been, but that's just how it goes. Even with the lower resolution backgrounds, 9's pretty still real look good. Maybe not as much anymore, but HD looks pretty good too. Except on the world map. Maybe not so good here. Also, for some reason, the overworld runs at a noticeably different frame rate. Maybe that's just a side effect of how big this game is, but who knows. Characters and monsters were not touched by Tetsuya Nomura this time around, and were instead given to Yoshitaka Amano and Saga series character designer Toshiyuki Itahana. I think this is why 9 was so visually different from 7 and 8. With Sakaguchi changing up the staff and artists, they created such a vast and varied medieval fantasy world, explorable and 3D for the first time. According to the Inside Final Fantasy IX documentary Square published, they had different teams designing each city. They said they wanted the theme of the game to be living, having each town be its own big self-sustaining thing. It makes sense considering how memorable every city in this game is, but what's a pretty looking town without a soundtrack to pull it together? Oh wait, do you hear that? Is that Nobuo Uematsu's best original soundtrack? Why, yes it is! In my opinion. I could talk for like 10 years about Uematsu's soundtrack for this game, but I'll spare you. All you need to know is that this time around, Nobuo was getting really into proggy rock while reaching compositional heights for other genres as well. The overworld theme, Crossing Those Hills, is one of the most beautiful pieces I've heard from Uematsu, let alone Final Fantasy, let alone a video game. We'll come back to music later. Because right now, I want to dive into the gameplay. Quick question. Have you played a JRPG? Final Fantasy, Grandia, The Legend of Dragoon, Dragon Quest. These franchises are all derivative of each other, and if you've played one, you probably know what to expect. Final Fantasy IX is exactly that, except it's slow, like really slow. People give 7 shit for this, and 8 isn't exactly light speed or anything, but I feel like 9's battles become a slog at times. It's like loading, camera pan, zoom on Zidane, zoom on enemy, pull back the camera and start! Watch that ATB, go, go, go! Attack! Yeah, I did it! One of the things I really liked about Final Fantasy VII is how quickly your characters would do the thing after you hit the button. In Suikoden 1 and 2, whenever you launch an attack for your group, you'll see multiple characters do their thing at the same time, and it felt more realistic. Well, realistic for an anime-themed war video game. With 9, it feels like everything is on a huge delay, except for the summons, which for some reason are generally a bit shorter than previous games have done. Well, except Arc. That is nearly 2 minutes long, what the heck? I do really like the equipment and ability system though. Instead of learning abilities through materia or drawing them from enemies, you find pieces of equipment that you have to put on to learn stuff. You'll get EXP as well as ability points from monsters, so the goal is to have the same piece of gear on long enough to learn whatever passive buff or ability you need. Or you can play the remastered version and put on high speed and 9,999 damage and run in a circle mashing X until you get it. Job well done, totally earned, gamer cred intact, I win. That's actually a problem that has been solved with a lot of the PS1 remasters. Some of them are notorious for being a bit grindy and slow in sections, so Square is basically like, hey, let's break the game so people can experience the story easier. And you know what? Fair. That's great. This allows people who aren't very experienced with RPGs or interested in grinding out combat to mash through and get to the narrative beats where the real meat of the experience is. Choices are always a good thing, and having the ability to speed up some of this is great. I'll always enjoy the strategic experience of the boss fights that turn-based RPGs offer, and cutting down on the grind time is really nice as well. However, if you're playing that original copy, you'll have an increased encounter rate as well as no speed up options. But hey, the speedrun of Final Fantasy IX is like 9.5 hours, so maybe it's not that bad. Just like, you know, modern quality of life changes, making old stuff seem tedious. Like who sends mail now? Why would you do that? You have phone, you have computer. Put that away.
Stop it.
But will Final Fantasy IX change anyone's mind about turn-based combat? No. One of, if not the most important part of a Final Fantasy is the story and characters. Now, thankfully, I think that 9 kills it in this aspect. No jokes, let's just talk about it. Final Fantasy IX is a story about identity. It's a story about the question, what am I, or what do I do? Now, with any traditional narrative-focused JRPG, including this one, it eventually turns into a story about saving the world. JRPGs have it real bad because it typically turns into a story of like, we have to kill God, or some godlike celestial being trying to overthrow humanity. If you can think of one that doesn't, let me know, because I, for the life of me, cannot remember. I, for one, want a JRPG where the final boss is the IRS for tax evasion. But what happens around these stories is what makes an impact on the player. Every Final Fantasy's taken a different approach to this. While 1 through 3 are all very simplistic and lack any interesting characterization, starting with 4, we started to see the thoughts of the people you would control. Cecil's internal struggle and difficulties with his position in life are a central part of that game's narrative, as he starts off as a disillusioned knight before becoming a true warrior of the light. 6 tossed us into a similar story, but had a stronger focus on the large cast of characters. To this day, 6 is impressive because of how much character depth they were able to achieve on that tiny little baby cartridge, and also good graphics and music. And the train suplex thing. 7, however, focused more on the conflict between Cloud and Sephiroth, with character moments being relegated to a section of the game as opposed to being spread out throughout the entire experience. Yuffie had like her one thing and like that was it. When 8 rolled around, we began to see how a slow character evolution could happen on screen, albeit with a few hiccups. 9 decided that it was time to try and make an entire cast of lovable characters, and I think they succeeded. Mostly. Squaresoft actually implemented an entirely new gameplay feature in order to make this work with the story. The active time event. Normally, when a trad Final Fantasy fan thinks of active, they think, oh, I should probably switch that to wait mode, but this is about the characters. Whenever you reach a new town or area, sometimes a little thing will trigger on the bottom left telling you a new scene is up, like unlocking a cutscene in a visual novel. In the story, a lot of the times the party tends to split up, putting you in control of one of the main cast members, and it's not always the same one. Here's where you get to see a lot of the really subtle character interactions, particularly with Princess Garnet and Vivi. Here you get to see further glimpses into not just the main story arcs, but each character's developmental arc, the what I mentioned earlier. Princess Garnet early on attempts to cast away her identity as princess and adopts the name Dagger because, well, she was holding on to a dagger and also not very creative. Zidane's all like, oh my god, is she serious? During a lot of her active time events, you see her trying to take Zidane's advice and act more casual, saying things like scumbag. She's like, awesome? Is that a word? What? It takes her a while to get there. I must speak with this girl and learn how commoners speak. It's cute though, because this event is called Garnet Tries Harder, because she already tried once, man. This growth isn't only relegated to these events though. Plenty happens in the main narrative as well. Let me tell you all a bit about each character for those who don't know. Our main character is Zidane Tribal. I already told you about him. A very extroverted type of hero in an age of Final Fantasy that called on more introverted characters to be tossed into the situation. Zidane's a go-getter who holds his friends in the highest of regards even when they might be mad at him, and they get mad at him a lot. He tries to think of others instead of himself for reasons. Next up is the iconic and lovable black mage, Vivi or Natir. Vivi's like a little puppy dog who's extremely klutzy. He's always tripping on himself, getting lost, crying, and stumbling over his words. Everyone in the party recognizes how fragile Vivi is and treats him with the utmost respect and affection. It's very heartwarming. Where does it come from? I don't know. The aforementioned Princess Garnet Till Alexandros XVII is the daughter of the Mad Queen. She's naive, but interested in learning. Garnet, or Dagger, decided to leave home because Queen Braun was kind of controlling and crazy, and it's probably a good idea that she did. Also, she's a white mage and a summoner. She brings on the big cutscenes. Captain Aldebert Steiner is one of my favorite characters in this game, but it took a minute for him to get that way. I know he kind of looks like a huge doofus, but seeing his character arc is fascinating. He's an extremely loyal knight who has sworn his life to the throne of Alexandria, promising to protect Princess Garnet at all costs, even though she kinda hates it. Donned the nickname Rusty by Zidane, Steiner gets to experience a loss of faith, and it's an existential read. Also, 2 observations. Number 1, those are definitely chainmail shorts. Or, shorts. Also, he kind of looks like human Shrek. Sorry, not sorry. Freya Crescent is a tragic character. She's a Burmesian, which is a race of anthro-rats, a rat girl. She's a dope dragon knight, she's skilled with a lance, and is able to put on a smile when it's necessary. When we first meet Freya a couple hours into the game, she already had an established relationship with Zidane, which is cool and unlike many JRPGs. They're close enough for her to threaten him for drunkenly flirting with her anyways. Freya may be in search of an estranged lover, but she refuses to live in the past. Next up is Aiko Carroll, a little baby summoner white mage child who was left alone at the age of 6. She was raised by Moogles in the summoner town of Maiden Sari outside of the Mist Continent in the Outer Reaches. She's also a dirty thief and steals from the dwarf village to survive.
I can take a hint, gotta face the facts. You're my only friend.
Moogle. Her grandfather told her to never leave town until the age of 16, but then she meets Zidane and co. I wonder what happens next. Quina Quinn is an extremely interesting video game character. That's because Queen is the first playable genderless Final Fantasy character. At least in the English version of the game, Queen is referred to as she/he, which to me reads one of 2 ways. Either Quina considers themselves a gender, or they don't really care what you call them. The game itself seems to do that as well, because there's this trophy called Femme Fatales when you have them and all the ladies in a party together, but also Zidane's Protect Girls abilities does not apply to she/he. It's very curious, but it's cool to see this kind of representation in a video game from 2000. But also, Queena's androgynous nature doesn't have anything to do with their identity quest either. Queen is a chef and just wants to taste all of the great cuisine in the world. Also, she/he is a blue mage, meaning they're the Vor class. Yeah, Vor. Little less scary than when Quistis does it. Lastly, we have Amarant Coral. I didn't know he was a human until I was older because of how drastically different he looks to other humans in the game. Amarant is a mercenary the queen hires who fails and is like, Zidane, you have bested me in combat, now finish the job. And Zidane's like, nah dude, it's cool. And then Amarant's like, what? So he joins the party as a favor for his life. He doesn't really open up much. You actually have a couple other people in your party fight from time to time, like the crew of the Tantalus and the extremely powerful Beatrix, another devout knight of Alexandria. But these are characters who do a lot for the plot, which I'm not gonna spoil in this video. And of course, I haven't forgotten about the lead villain, Kuja. Also known as That's a Penis, is proof that male fan service is okay. I remember reading forums back in the day saying that Kuja sucked, but these days I think he's an extremely enthralling villain to see. Probably tied with Kefka for my favorite Final Fantasy antagonist. And there's our main cast. Well, besides Lanny, who's objectively the hottest. Most of these characters would have an interesting story on their own, but it's their interactions and intentions in game that really bring it all together. To see Steiner cautiously follow Zidane for the first half of the game, the tensions building up over time lends so much to each of their arcs. The way Zidane essentially adopts Vivi as an older brother to teach him about the world and give him confidence, it's all very heartwarming and makes for great storytelling. Even if the scene's just Zidane teaching Vivi a peeing ritual, tinkle tinkle. All of these characters have their reasons to be in a party to save the world, sometimes changing between discs. Final Fantasy IX follows a 3-arc structure, making it feel like 3 seasons of a TV show. Time passes, characters spend days apart. They miss each other, and it's just so good. Everything builds up over the course of the 4 lengthy discs to create some of the most engaging, wholesome, emotional moments I've experienced in a game. In fact, the ending consistently makes me bawl my eyes out. For real, no lie. but it's not perfect. Final Fantasy IX stumbles in a couple of narrative and gameplay aspects, and I'm not gonna just gloss over them. However, I am gonna make this video a two-parter because it's gonna be pretty lengthy if it's just one video. We are gonna come back with my nitpicks and critiques because I want to give people who are interested in playing after this video a chance to experience everything. I would love for you to see yourself exactly why I think it's so important. So I'm gonna come back next week with another video with my critiques, my nitpicks, my praises, my everything. I'm really gonna go into detail so I can tell you why Final Fantasy IX is my favorite game. So, I'll catch you guys soon, and just like Final Fantasy IX would want you to remember, you're not alone. Special thanks to Alfredo Arellano, Chris Shelton, Christopher Olivia, Cliff Pro, Donald Dowdy, David Molnar, Eli Shane Staufenecker, Flaming Fighter, Irrational, Jay Roos, Jeff Hichos, Jacoby Fitzpatrick, Josh Garbage Lord, Legend Gary, Nitron, Filamentus, Plasma Phoenix, Ronnie Vile, and Vlad Luss. Thank you very much for your Patreon support, and welcome to the beginning of the month of Square-Enix. I have a lot of videos prepared. I'm hoping to get out like 5. I have 7 written in case, but we'll see what happens. It's the way these things go sometimes. I'll catch you guys in a couple days. Love you, bye.